Go.
Hello and good evening. Welcome to Ahead of Game. I'm your host, Tiffanie Lewis. And tonight's show, we have some special guests for you. We're going to be talking about rankings tonight. And we've got a special group here that's going to give us a lot of insight, a lot of detail about rankings, what it means, what they're about, how do you get ranked. Tonight's a very special show. So we welcome our special guests, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Prep Hoops.
Wow. Preston Edwards, Prep Hoops, Louisiana. Also an off the bench sports contributor, um, and seems to be the resident guy that is involved with rankings for Prep Hoops, Louisiana.
Thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We also have Mr. Jeremiah Gray with G Sports with a Z.
Glad to be on the show. I'm 5 years in on the media. I cover majority of South Louisiana, high school basketball and high school football. Just glad to be on the show and kind of kick this thing off the right way.
Welcome. And last but not least, we have Mr. Hobert Grayson with Off the Bench Sports.
Hey, how is everybody doing? Glad to be here. I'm like Jeremiah. I'm roughly 5 years in. I cover all sports. I absolutely love being a part of the game that helps kids get to and try to understand what it is that they need to do and be to be at their next level. Thanks
Welcome.
for thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show as a guest. All right, we're going to kick this off, gentlemen. Looks like we keep going in and out. Okay, there we go. We're going to kick this off with just a very simple question, and you can give me a very simple answer. How do rankings work? Go ahead, Mr. Prep Hoops.
Wow. Um, it's a complicated yet simple question. Um, Rankings are a combination of tape watching, uh, coaches evaluation, um, other contributors evaluations, and you also take a tidbit from seeing who's ranked in other entities like 24/7, ESPN, or what have you, and you kind of putting in that gumbo pot of all that information, and you come out with a ranking for said player or said group of players, say the class of 2021, which is the most recent class, and you go from there. You also use there's a player evaluation form that has been floating around the internet forever that I've been using. Uh, Player performance evaluation form and kind of burn most of it into my head. So when I'm watching film or at a gym, it's kind of what I'm basing what I'm looking on. So
So,
that's just me per se, though.
right, I got you. So I'm going to let Mr. Jeremiah Gray answer that as well.
I think rankings just kind of give everybody something to talk about. What makes sports so beautiful is it's an opinionated topic when you're talking about who you think is the best, who you think the best shooter, who you think the best point guard, like whatever the topic is very opinionated. What you might think, what you might look for in a guard or a big man, I might not value it, and vice versa. I think that's what makes it such a good thing to have. You know what I'm saying? Rankings are very necessary in my opinion. Even if we don't agree with what we see sometimes, okay? I think for me, it's about perspective. I can see Prep Hoops come out with a ranking or whoever it might be come out with a ranking, and I might not agree with their top 10 or their top 5 or whatever it might be, but I might understand their perspective on why they had that particular ranking the way they had it. And so, you know, a lot of, you know, high school coaches, they use that as motivation and fuel to the fire when they're trying to push some of their best players and things of that nature. So I think from that standpoint, that's what makes the rankings very necessary. And for me, I do actually plan to start getting into ranking the state. And some of my criteria is, you know, I think just seeing a kid at least 3 to 4 times. I think it's hard for somebody to say they know what kind of caliber of player somebody is by just watching them play one time. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you could see certain traits and things like that, but you know, sometimes a kid could have an off game. Sometimes that night you seen it, he might just be hitting on all cylinders, and it could be fool's gold. So I look at that. To be honest with you, I really don't look at. I'm not going to look at Prep Hoops or 24/7 Sports and make my evaluation off a kid off of what I see from their rankings. I really trust my eyes. Now I do ask people who I respect, people evaluation who I respect around the state. I might ask them like, "What you think about this kid?" But I don't necessarily look at 24/7 Sports, Rivals, Prep Hoops, and say, "Okay, let me base my rankings on my opinion on a kid off their rankings." That's just me.
So what I heard you say was that this is a lot of subjectivity. Is that right, Hobert?
Oh yeah.
I think maybe so. The one thing that I've been saying since I started was we don't have a criteria, up to date criteria that everyone is using. If we're not using the same rubric, how are we coming up with the same results? And I definitely agree with Jeremiah what he said about seeing kids play. You have to see kids play, and I don't care about when a team plays a team that they're supposed to beat. Like I give a kid no credit off of winning a game they're supposed to win, or a matchup that he's supposed to win. You don't get any credit. Well, again, most people don't play really tough schedules. I see a lot of really good teams that play mediocre schedules. And you know the teams that play the really good schedules because they're always out there. You know, those are the Scotlandvilles, the Madison Preps, the Nishes, the Zacharys, the Wasmans, the Washitas. Carol is getting into that.
Class B and C.
Uh, I don't want to lie. I don't watch a lot of Class B and C. And that's because most of the time they don't play, and I try to watch everybody, but I have to do a better job at Class B and C.
So
I'll say this.
go ahead.
I think it's easier, in my opinion, to rank kids in football versus basketball. And the reason why is because in football, kids are constantly updating their film, right? And basketball is not so much.
Right.
It's hard to find kids to have updated film. And the next part about it is this too. You can get fooled by a highlight tape. I think that for me, I have an app that I use where I watch whole game films. If I think you that good, I'll go watch a whole game film on you. I think a lot of people are not gonna take the time to go watch a whole game film. I'm not saying I'm gonna watch every game, but I'm gonna watch at least 2 whole game films on you. And it's gonna be good against some quality opponents for me to get a real evaluation of what kind of caliber player I think you are. And I think that's something I think that a lot of people that evaluates or rank or whatever you want to call it, they're not watching whole game film. They're looking at highlights, and you can get fooled by a highlight tape.
Well, how does a kid even get on the radar for rankings? You just talked about you watching highlights of kids. How do they even get on the radar to get ranked, or for you to take a look at them, Jeremiah, or you, Preston? are you, Hobert, to even get a look at? Because there's thousands of players, and we are talking mostly about football and basketball. Although baseball is definitely has rankings, track has rankings. How do they get on your radar? Is it media hype that puts them there? Is it coaches you know?
And it for me it's a combination of everything, because of course our company is based on not necessarily the top 50 players, it's the ones who aren't getting noticed. So we're supposed to write about the B and C classes that barely get seen, but they have good players. We're supposed to write about, kids who fall through the cracks, because most of the national rankings, other rankings, or even the entities in the state know who the top players are.
Hmm.
It's the ones who, uh, some would even say, and I'll say, like, and I'll use this kid as an example. Devin Bilbo, he is a player at Airline High School. True enough, he's going to school on track scholarship, but he's one of the better players in North Louisiana. No one past Natchitoches knows who he is. So he's somebody you write about and he ended up being two-time All-State honorable mention because his name gets out there through some writing, and then you go into the gym and you watch him play, and he's like, oh, well, you do realize he's one of the better kids in the state. So you're supposed to go to the gym and lay your eyes on. You're supposed to, and unfortunately, because a lot of coaches don't update their huddle or even send you game film, you have to sometimes look at highlight tapes just to get an idea of what the kid can even do. So it's definitely a hard process, but you're supposed to find those diamonds in the rough by going to the gym. That's what you're supposed to do.
And so, how many times you said the eye test, Jeremiah? How many times? So people have passed your eye test for them to be ranked for you.
Man, I'll give you an example. I have a good friend of mine. He coaches at Northwest High School. He's an assistant coach at Northwest High School. He was telling me about John Queries McGee, Jigger, a year and a half ago. Like, look, G, they got a kid down here, Opelousas. He could play. And, I respect his basketball mind. I respect his opinion on how he evaluates. So I ended up coming to a game, not even covering the game. It was in a situation where I was on the way to Dallas, and I really didn't have time to really go cover the game. I just wanted to stop in and just kind of check him out. And I was blew away. I was blown away. I watched maybe a quarter and a half, and that quarter and a half told me that John Queries McGee can definitely go play college ball somewhere. He definitely should have been somebody that can get scholarship offers. I'm not saying major schools. I'm talking about, the NAIAs, the low level Division Ones. And so when I saw that, I reached out to John Queries and, kind of asked him like what was going on. Like, anybody talking to you? He was like, no. And I think a part of that was that particular year, Opelousas wasn't playing anybody. So that plays a part. If you're not playing good teams, nobody's going to really see you play, right?
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, I think I know he lived in Houston.
Yeah, he moved.
I think his 9th grade year.
Yeah.
And he moved to Opelousas his 10th grade year. So, and in his 10th grade year, he played for like a little local team, which, if you're playing for, no disrespect to the little local AAU team, but if you're playing with a local AAU team, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get seen by anybody. And I think that's what happened. Had John Queries been on a circuit team, with Randy Livingston or New Orleans Elite or Louisiana Elite, John Queries McGee probably would be at UL or Southern Miss right now. No disrespect to Nickel State. I'm just saying he probably would have ended up with like 12 scholarship offers. So that's a prime example of a kid that is just as good as a lot of kids in the state, but didn't get his due diligence because he wasn't seen because he played for a local AAU team, and his 10th grade year, they just wasn't playing anybody. And his senior year, they decided to play all the top dogs, but then, his senior year is pretty much too late.
Right. So we're going to talk about what does it mean to play those type of teams. We'll also talk about where the rankings, where was John Queries and players like him in the rankings? Did they outshine the rankings? Did they not meet the ranking standard to be ranked, even though they're going on to play college basketball in post-secondary? We'll be right back. Again, I'm your host Tiffany Lewis, ahead of the game. No cap, no shade, just facts here. We'll be back in a moment. Shout out to our sponsor this week, Gabriel Lewis Photography Studios. If you are looking for prom pictures, graduation pictures, video for your wedding, please give him a call. He's the best in the business. We'll be right back.
Hobert, you not counting us down or something on these 20 seconds? You're muted.
I'm counting, but y'all don't need to hear it. I'm talking to Tiffany. She can hear me.
Oh,
Yeah.
I forgot. Y'all producing. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Out your way.
We ain't supposed to be doing this no way. Because this thing's still recording. Be quiet, Preston. I mean, give me more work to do.
We're back. Welcome back to Ahead of the Game. We've got the best in the business when it comes to ranking, and we're going to continue our conversation. Mr. Gray was talking about a recruit that is now going on to play deep Division I basketball for Nicholls State, John Queris McGee, and it brought up an interesting question. So, was John Queris ranked in prep hoops? Was he ranked on your scale?
Well, I'm not gonna lie, Jeremiah. My situation of coming to John Queris was about the same. Brad Boyd, coach of Southside, told me about John Queris. I went to find what film I could on John Queris. I watched it, and of course, we update rankings 4 times a year. So he might have missed one cycle, but he started out mid 50s. Something like that, because there are a few things, even on highlight tape, sometimes some things just pop.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, whoa, it's part of it's ridiculous. But, we'll have one more ranking release after Gatorade Player of the Year and all this stuff like that is going on. But right now, he's in the top 10. So
that last ranking is still going to be 2021, or are we moving on to 2022?
I mean, we're going to have just one final, just like a swan song to 2021. And then, but we're going to be focusing on, we're going to be focusing on 22, 23, and 24. So
let's get into, so since we're talking about rankings and we're at student athletes fall and the possibilities after their rank, what they'll do next. We just had a big signing by Chet come up. He's ranked number 1 in the country, of course, by ESPN. Tell me your thoughts on him being number 1 ranked, and what do you think he's going to do at Gonzaga as a number 1 ranked player in the country? Hobert, you can start us off.
I got to see Chet play live a couple of summers ago. My son played on the Under Armour circuit, and they played them twice. It's impressive to see a kid that's 7'1", handle the ball up at the top of the key and, shoot the ball pretty decent from that range. All that doesn't impress me, because at the end of the day, if you shoot enough shots, you're supposed to make a few. And I think it's a lot of hype with a lot of these kids, and I'm not saying that Chet can't play. I'm saying I don't think he's gonna have the first year at Gonzaga that Jalen Suggs had. It's gonna be interesting to see though, because he's not gonna have the ball in his hand completely.
Right. Well, obviously,
he's gonna have
different way when he gets to Gonzaga.
Right.
But again, he's the number 1 player in the country. I think he's ranked across all polls as that. I don't think a poll missed him as number 1.
No.
So, and I know Mr. Edwards is a huge fan of his. So I'll let you talk about where you think the number 1 player in the country ranked is going to be when it comes to him playing on Gonzaga. the number 2 team in the country after the NCAA tournament, losing only to Baylor in their entire season.
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna say it. I'm a big fan. I've just watched him play. Uh, Mark Few, and it's really gonna be more of the Mark Few and how he incorporates him into the system and how much he lets him go. We'll see if number 1 player status kind of comes out. But Jalen's leaving, but he's going to be playing with a lot of veterans, and I'm sure they're going to incorporate him because his skill set is one that is very, he can do multiple things. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure he's going to have a good freshman season. Probably going to be an outstanding freshman season, but it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be one that's going to just send him to the league per se.
All right. Well, let's talk about some number 1s that we have in Louisiana. Who would you have on your top 5, Mr. Gray?
For 2021?
2021.
Carlos Stewart was my number 1 player in the state, hands down. No disrespect to any other kid. I based that off of the longevity. From 9th grade all the way through his senior year, he continued to get better. His body looks college ready. The way he ascended far as being able to shoot the ball, because early on in his career, he was just like kind of a defender, just athletic. But then he added that jump shot and then range to his game. His leadership qualities, coachable. Just when he steps on the court, he just was a difference maker all around. All around the board. If Carlos Stewart was 6'3", probably would have been going to LSU. He was my number 1 player in the state. I know some people probably said it was Keon Coleman, which I could understand why somebody would say that. I could understand their perspective. I could understand why somebody would have said Didi was their number 1 player in the state.
I'm asking you for your top 5.
But so I got Carlos at 1, Keon was at 2, Didi was at 4. I had Jaquarius at 3, and at 5. I forgot who I had if I'm having a brain for it. At 5 I had I can't even remember who I had at 5. I'm having a brain freeze.
We'll come back to your 5, Mr. Preston.
But that was my 4. That was my 4 in order.
Okay, Mr. Preston.
Well, I mean, of course, I'm gonna get since the prep hoop rankings are closely associated with my name. I don't know why, but
you could change 1 or 2 on that.
But to me and Carlos, it's probably ending the season as the best player in the state. For a long period of time, it was almost like 1A, 1B between Carlos and Derek Tezino. Because I mean, Carlos does some phenomenal things, but there are some things that Derek does and that pop off the film, and you're like, "Oh, okay." Keon, of course, he's probably the best athlete out of everyone. That would be, but I'm gonna go as we have them listed for prep hoops, which would be Derek 1, Keon 2, Carlos 3. Daniel Ortiz was 4, and Claudell Harris at present ended up being 5, which the end of the year, like I said, the end of the year rankings might shift a little bit, only because a player at Bonneville named Will Allen, who really had a phenomenal year.
That was my fifth.
There you go. I knew he would come back around. Will Allen. All right.
So,
well, we're going to hear from Hobert Grayson in just a minute with his top 5, because I'm sure these probably will change in some order for him after the break. Again, you're watching Ahead of the Game with your host, Tiffanie Lewis. I want to give a shout out again to our sponsor, Gabriel Lewis Studios. Make sure you give him a call if you have any need to get senior photos. He is the best in the business. We'll be right back. Get it together, bro. Preston, Hobert trying to decide who his five are.
Oh no, he should already know that. As many phone conversations that I had to hear.
His five is totally different.
Terriers, Fuseli, and Jaden Shelvin, Devontae, and I love Devontae Austin.
We can't hear you, Hope.
You can say what you want about Fuseli. Fuseli is a dog.
You know he
Period. Hey, point guard to point guard, or shooting guard to shooting guard. I'll put Fuseli against anybody.
Sir, are the 20 seconds up?
Oh yeah, that's on Tiffanie. She kept her own clock this time. So whenever Tiffanie ready, I'm gonna have to go back and edit anyway because you keep talking. I love you, Preston.
Welcome back to Ahead of the Game. I'm your host, Tiffanie Lewis. And again, we've got a lively group here. And I promise you that Hobert would give his top five. And I'm pretty sure they don't look anything like Prep Hoop or G Sports. So the world wants to know, who are your top five, Hobert?
I don't know. I don't know if I had a top five. I generally at the end of each season I've been in existence, I put out kids that I thought were the best players around the state. I've yet to do that this year because I had an issue with this year's season, to be honest. But kids that I really like, Devonta Austin, Wiseman High School, Jaden Shelvin, STM, definitely Carlos Stewart. And this is not a 1, 2, 3 thing. This is just kids that I like. Definitely Carlos Stewart. Did I say Devonta Austin? That kid was really good.
That was the first name you mentioned, sir. Yeah.
Okay, I mentioned him twice then. But nah, let me stop playing. Devonta, Jaden, Carlos, Derek for sure. Derek is definitely a top 5 player in the state. And the fifth guy to me is probably gonna be a guy that y'all are like, what the hell? But he kind of was on the radar but off the radar because he didn't meet or exceed my level. And that guy, I've been in love with him since the first day I saw him, and that kid is Daniel Ortiz. And him and Will Allen, they were what and what to me. Will had a great season, but and I know he's gotten 3 Gatorade Player of the Year awards from Farm Bureau, the Gatorade, and then now yesterday he just got the LABC award for Player of the Year. But I guess I just expected more from Will, and I don't know. Other than having I think he averaged 24 and 15 on the season. I don't know how much more I could have expected, but I thought that Will probably had the best chance of watching them. I watched Bonnable about 4 or 5 times. I thought maybe they would have been the team that could have hoisted the trophy at the end. I can't lie. It's probably, I got probably about 8 kids that I thought could have rotated a variable in the top 5. I ain't gonna lie, it's a couple of more kids. I really like Eric McKnight Jr. at Southwood. I thought he was a kid at the beginning of the season that was gonna show some elevate his game. Also, Turk at what is it, Landry, LB Landry now again?
Turk, LB Landry, yeah.
Turk at LB Landry. I thought that with him, Benny, and Gage Dorsey, I thought that Turk would have elevated. I got about 8 kids. I ain't gonna lie, like that. I just really like. I don't know. I don't know 5. I don't know 5, and y'all know I was gonna be difficult. Y'all knew I was gonna be difficult, but no. Devonta, Jaden, Carlos, Tezano, and
Ortiz.
Daniel Ortiz. That's it. Daniel Ortiz. I'm gonna go with them 5 as my favorite.
Well, I do see some similarities in you all's rankings. I mean, some of your names match up, particularly Carlos matches with the ranking, and he was number 2 in the final rankings, I think, on Prep Hoops, G Sports.
He was number 1 for me.
Yeah, and Prep Hoops we hadn't released the final ranking yet for the year. So
okay, so I guess when we talk about rankings, how much of this has to do with media hype? You talked a lot about coaches updating their huddle. I see a lot of activity on Twitter, Instagram. Does that have anything to do with player rankings? You talked about eye test, you talked about subjectivity, but does any of that go into a player being ranked? How much media they get? We saw Keon Coleman. He was getting media all over the place, which I think brought a lot of other attention to players in the area. So how much does the hype or the media, social media, play into these rankings?
It don't play any. It don't play any. You know, it doesn't play a factor for me. I'm being completely honest with you. I don't get caught up with all of that. I really sit down and evaluate kids. And I was really surprised that Keon wasn't in, y'all top 5. And I can understand why he's not, because the whole question was with Keon is who we playing against. That's what everybody been saying. But Keon showed that on the circuit that he can do some good things. Now it's not at the same level that he did it, playing for Opelousas Cat League, but he showed that he can still make an impact and be a really good player, playing on the EYBL. So if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have Keon in my top 5.
No, and it was the same for us. I mean, you always have questions about someone in a smaller classification. But then you go to the EYBL games and you see Keon almost do some of the same things.
Right.
They play less time, and he's playing with better players, and he's still doing these things. So I guess I'll give my time in the chair to Mr. Grayson, since he has his hand.
Is my mic on? Pick me, please pick me. I'm glad you asked that question. Jeremiah, I'm so glad you brought that up. Because at the end of the day, Keon is probably one of the most phenomenal athletes the state of Louisiana has ever seen. And I've seen some really good ones. And Preston and I, we talk about kids a lot. And the one thing that I keep telling Preston is athleticism has a lot to do with basketball, but it's not the end-all, be-all of basketball. It can't be the primary thing that we rate and rank kids by. Because guess what? 40 years ago, I could jump out the gym. That doesn't mean I was the best basketball player in North Louisiana.
So today, when you were 8, you could jump out the gym?
Oh, yeah, could jump out the gym. Don't worry about all that. I was just, I was being rhetorical, I guess. But at the end of the day, for me, I can't speak for anyone else. And the OpCap coach and myself are cool. I really care about Keon. I think he's a phenomenal basketball player. Preston, mute your thing. And all that other stuff. But they didn't like, okay, so I saw Keon score quadruple double, I think it was, in the Southside tournament. And the next game they played J.S. Clark. And they didn't do anything special. They just put their best defensive guy on Keon, and they shut him down for 2.5, 3 quarters. And it was like when he had someone on him defending him that was as athletic, because it's hard to be more athletic than Keon. But when you got someone that's had someone defending him, which is what's going to happen at the next level at Michigan State, everybody they play, they're going to have a Keon Coleman on their team. And what's going to separate him? He's not a primary ball handler. He's not a primary scorer. He's a slash transition kid. Like, he's a kid that, go watch the All-Star game. He had 25 points, but he got 14 of them, 16 of them from leak outs. Like, I've never seen Keon, if Keon is a dude, I've never seen Keon go at another dude's neck. And this is, if there's one thing that I've seen that would make Carlos Stewart the consensus number one player in the state, is when him and Derek Kesno played at the showdown at the lake, it was no doubt that Carlos Stewart said, I'm finna show y'all who the best player in the state is, and he proceeded to dissect Derek in the first quarter. So much so that...
What about when he went at Daniel Ortiz? That was a classic battle.
Who that, bro?
Carlos Stewart.
Oh no! Again, I agree with you. Like, again, I saw Carlos play about 7 times this year, and every time I saw him play, it was in a big game, because again, it was at a tournament somewhere, and he went after everybody. It wasn't any, it wasn't. I'm not gonna compete this game, or Jonathan Pixley. This could have been a year that Pixley could have scheduled the Cherry Bunch game, and nobody would have said nothing, because Dunham had one basketball player, one. That was Carlos Stewart, and they won their division state championship.
Right, and to value your point, Opelousas Catholic went played Riverside at Riverside, and they lost by 27, 26 points. And I think that made a lot of people feel like Keon didn't deserve to be a Gatorade Player of the Year, because, and there's no disrespect to Riverside.
Hell no.
Riverside wasn't that good. You know what I'm saying? They was well coached. I mean, Gage is a bucket, but there's no reason in the world Opelousas Catholic should have lost by 27 points. And I think that's what hurt Keon, people might not want to admit it, but I think that hurt him from winning Gatorade Player of the Year.
Okay. Well, again.
Hold on. I'm sorry.
Let the host talk.
I talk too much. I'm sorry, y'all. Forgive me.
Okay, I was on mute because I tried to stop you a long time ago. I don't want to make this about any particular player. It was about whether the hype was part of the ranking. And you guys talked about Keon, and I said that because he has over 10,000 Twitters, and I didn't see much of the hype for Carlos. So I was just wondering if that had any effect on not just your rankings, but just rankings across the country, even with ESPN. And I think Mr. Gray said no. How about you, Preston?
Oh, at the end of the day, you have to go see players.
Right.
Now, true enough, you're supposed to, and part of the rankings also is supposed to be how and this is how ESPN and other places have done it forever. It's how they're supposed to project on the next level. That's why Chet is the number one guy. And that's why Reese Beekman was the best player last year, and Jalen Cook was second. Because of how they're supposed, because of how they're supposed to, the projection of how they're supposed to play on the next level. So, and true enough, I know how somebody feels about that projection thing, but unfortunately, that is part of the business, because that's how coaches on the next level recruit, because they can feel that if we get this guy who has a good projecting, or his athleticism or his ability is projected to be, they can teach him some skill, and he's going to project out to be that player.
And you brought up a good point too there, Preston. So when we talk about these rankings, are coaches following these rankings, making their you said predictions, but making their teams based off of the rankings that are coming from them, even though they may only be seeing highlights, because most of them aren't doing the eye test, as some of you said. Eye test is really an old school thing now. You got old coaches doing eye tests. Most of the time it's watching videos, highlights, those kind of things. So are coaches basing their recruitment off of your rankings?
Nah, I'm going to tell you, I talk to a lot of college coaches all the time. Do they pay attention to it? Yes, they do. And the rankings makes them inquire about players. It doesn't make them say, oh, he's ranked number 1 in the state, we got to go get it. He's ranked number 2 in the state, we got to go get it. That's not what, from the college coaches that I talk to, I don't know, with Preston and Hobert, the conversations that they have, but the conversations that I have, they just inquire about them. And a lot of this stuff is relationship based, okay? It got college coaches right now that I talk to. If I tell them a kid could play at their level, they take my word for it. Nah, they still gonna watch the kid and recruit the kid and watch film and stuff like that, but they will take my word for it. And they have other people around the state that has that same value with college coaches. And I think that's why you see so many kids transferring too, because a lot of these college coaches really not getting a chance to see these kids play 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Right. And that's how you get a true evaluation.
Right. Yeah, the NCAA cut out their time, and we're not even going to talk about the COVID factor. The NCAA cut their time the summer before. So their assistants, when they're not playing on Monday night or Tuesday night, hey, they have to be on the road or in a gym that Thursday. They have to try to find guys. So true enough.
Let's talk about this, Preston. Let's talk about recruiting those players in people's own backyards. Now, U of H did a heck of a job recruiting just out of Houston. They didn't have to go anywhere. They didn't have to go anywhere to get their top players. They went right there in their backyard. What's happening with our players when we talk about rankings? What was Greg Williams ranked as?
Greg Williams
was like 3, huh?
Yeah, he was the number 3 player in the state.
And he had to go all the way to New York.
Well, I don't think he had to go. I don't think he had to go. I think that was more of
he wanted New York to come back to Lafayette.
I think he wanted to get away at the time.
No,
no. And I think that Greg thought that he should have had an LSU offer.
No.
If he didn't get the LSU offer, he wasn't trying to stay home.
No.
Mr. Gray. I'm glad you have insight, but she was asking us the question.
I'm sorry, but that's just UL did not want him at the time. Period. They did. I don't even think they offered him.
That's hard to believe.
I'm telling you. I have a relationship with Greg. Again, BRCC just did it. Jordan was at Madison Prep 2 years ago. Jordan could have went. I'm muted. My bad.
No, you're not. You're not muted.
Okay. Jordan could have played at BRCC out of Madison Prep.
Jordan Johnson.
Huh? No, not Jordan Johnson. Jordan light-skinned point guard Jordan from 2 years ago. Right. He didn't have to go to prep school to go and wait 2 years to come back and for BRCC to give him a full scholarship. Greg was good enough to play at UL, LSU out of high school. Malik was good enough to play at LSU out of high school. Yes, that's
wow.
It. Hey, freshman player of the year, again.
In the Sun Belt.
Hey, You look at how you want. He ain't saying that Malik was going to go.
If Jalen Cook was in the Sun Belt, he'll be tearing it up too.
Well, guess what? I'm going to go ahead and make this prediction right now. Jalen is going to UL or Tulane.
That's false.
Hey, we gonna see.
And you know I know.
We gonna see.
So, when we talk about these rankings, that's what I'm getting at. So we talk about the rankings. Greg Williams ranked number 3, going to St. John, going to New York. Shouldn't he have been at somebody's school in Louisiana? When we're talking about rankings, now you tell me where Louisiana rankings are in terms of national ranking. You've got a number 1 Carlos or Keon. Where are they ranked nationally? Of course, we know where Keon is ranked in terms of football nationally, but where do our rankings stand when we talk about Louisiana 1 through 10? Where does that stack up across the nation with our rankings?
I don't really think them college coaches really like value Louisiana rankings because we looked at it as a football state. I think, like I say, I think it draws attention to those kids when they see the rankings, like, and it makes them inquire about them. But I don't think they value it like, okay, he's number 1 in Louisiana. Let me go get him. If they're ranked on ESPN, because let's be honest, they have incentives in their contract. So if they're ranked on ESPN or something like that, nationally, yeah, they might value it a little more because they're trying to get that bonus.
Yeah, but this year we don't have anyone in the top 200 pretty much, or we have it's 1 or 2. 2023 has, as of today, has like 3 kids in the top 200. Should be 5. And 2024, of course, now we got a top 20 player, and Mr. Lockett and Isidore Newman. So as of today, because ESPN's newest rankings just came out today. Right. But I mean, it's a situation where, like Jeremiah said, we are a football state. So part of my job, Jeremiah's job, Mr. Grayson's job is to shine light on those kids so that when Paul Biancardi, when he comes in, or when he sees the 1 or 2 tournaments that he sees, and he sees a Louisiana kid, yeah, and they need to be like, yeah, we see what y'all see, and he needs to be nationally ranked. But it's also about us being in tournaments. Or I have a friend that coaches in Dallas. Heck, college coaches, Kansas, Big 12 schools just come to his pickup days. And we don't have a place where college coaches are going to just come to our pickup day.
Right.
So that it's relationships, like Jeremiah said.
Yeah, well, they do, Preston. It's just that, and I'm just being all the way transparent with you. Our Louisiana kids think they're too good for the schools in Louisiana. I'm excluding LSU from that.
I keep hearing that.
I'm excluding LSU from that. Like, UL walk in the building, UNO, Louisiana Monroe, Northwestern, Nichols, Tulane, these kids, like, look at them like they're a D3 school.
Right, and that's why we talk about our HBCUs. Grambling, Southern is not.
It won't even give them a conversation.
Right.
And I think that's really the bigger problem than more so saying that our in-state schools are not recruiting our kids. Because let's take, for example, Carlos Stewart. He's going all the way to Santa Clara. Now, I don't know this. I'm just speculating when I say this. Herb Sendick is the head coach for Santa Clara. Who did he coach? James Harden. Like, they use that as a recruiting tactic. Oh, I used to coach James Harden in Arizona State. And like a kid will go to a school just off of that. You know what I'm saying? Like
Rice University.
You know what I'm saying? Like kids, like you have conversations with kids, you ask them why you going to a school, and they will give you reasons like that. And it's like, what does him coaching James Harden have to do with you?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's really about, them kids really don't understand, and it starts at home too. They don't understand the whole grand scheme of things when it comes to finding the right fit, in my opinion.
Yeah, coaches do use the how many players we put in the league thing and all that stuff like that. I don't think Herb coached James, but Herb also had Julius Hodge at North Carolina.
I thought he coached James Harden.
I think that was still Hurley at the time.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah, I think so. But but again, Herb has a name.
Yeah, he got a name, right?
Yeah, a few coaches. Nobody in Louisiana has a name. Of course, LSU is LSU, right. But it would almost take.
LSU has recruited though from the top rankings that you guys have put out. They have basketball. They had two. Matter of fact, I know year before last, one from Baton Rouge. That played on the LSU basketball team that were in your rankings. So they've done some homegrown. I'm just wondering why we don't have more. And as you said, I've heard from coaches that have said that kids don't honor the fact that it's a home, local team or a state, a state team.
Yeah.
But that's the next question I have though is we talked briefly about this, but the rankings that you put out, how can a kid, you talked a little bit about AAU. Does it matter? You said somebody else would have been ranked high if they had played on an EYBL circuit or a gauntlet circuit. But those kids who are not, they get left out of the ranking situation. They don't get seen unless there is some other type of method that they can be seen. They get left out of the situation.
A lot of the time.
They can, but again, like I say, I work for somebody that's why they make jokes about me being in almost every gym because I got to hit it. I got to hit the road after my day job a whole lot of times to go from the B and C school because I can just give you an example. The beginning of November when B and C starts, I'm in Summerfield, Louisiana, watching Simsboro and Summerfield. And
that probably was a good game though.
Unfortunately, one big thing was gone, and that was Randy Carlisle because he was at Anacoco. So that game wasn't as good as it probably would have been. Okay. And then you wait for 2 weeks, and then 5A starts, and you're waiting for tournament season so you can see players from different schools so you can include them in your rankings or include them in our rankings because, again, we're supposed to find almost everybody. So when I'm at Dorleen and North DeSoto, and North DeSoto won, 2 games this year, and true enough, Dorleen was a top 4 team in Class B, but I'm at Dorleen and North DeSoto because I'm supposed to find kids that probably have something to be worth being ranked. Excuse me.
Well, Hobert, what advice would you give to coaches to help get their student athletes ranked? I guess in terms of, you mentioned games being played, the competitiveness of the games. What advice would you give coaches to help with that? Because they play a role in this too, from what I'm hearing from you all.
Coaches definitely play a role in every aspect of the game, from scheduling to skill development, and probably the most unseen part about it, and all of this is coaches helping kids getting scholarships and being put on someone's board. Probably the biggest instance for that is Evangel Jathans Ross. Just signed a couple of days ago. I think it was to UNO Xavier
New Orleans.
Kid worked his butt off, and he did a great job at working his butt off and led a very young Evangel basketball team. When the opportunities come and people are in your gym or in the gym where you're playing, you have to put the best version of you on the court to give people a reason to want to talk about you, to want to come see you play, and that's how you build your name. The one thing that I always tell coaches is, and it's no shame in this. Uh, if Carlos Sample and the Scotlandville Hornets, Madison Prep, Jeff Jones, or even Nathaniel Roche and the Carver Rams, Casey Jones and the Wiseman Wildcats. Hell, I'm trying to go where they're playing if I'm a coach. They're at the top of the food chain, those dudes right now. Sean Dumas, Crescent City. It's just a lot of dudes that are really good at what they do right now.
A lot of those coaches are worried about their win-loss records because they want to try to make it in their class.
You know, another guy is Eddie Hamilton at Airline. You know, this is his first year at Airline, and he's trying to build a program to the standard he set at Southwood, and it's gonna come. But they, you know, those guys, they don't turn away from challenges. They don't shy away from challenges. But another thing that they've done that's really well is they built relationships with college coaches. You know, they have hundreds of coaches in their Rolodex. It's no shame, if you're a young coach, it's no shame in modeling what you do after someone that has proven that their method works, that their method was and is successful. You know, I want to say this because, you know, me, I just want to do the best I can to help kids. Like, the two other guests on the show with us, like, I watch what they do all the time. Like, I'm fans of Jeremiah's. I'm a fan of Preston's. You know, I'm a fan of Josh Preston. I'm a fan of Nick Lane. Like, all these guys that work their cans off. And so if it's something that you see that they do that you can incorporate to help you be better, why not borrow it? Hey, I'm going to give it back to y'all when I finish, though, okay? I got about 15 more years.
I think, too, Maul Monday has done a great job around the last few years of creating those showcase games at Loyola and different venues around the state. I think more coaches need to try to get involved with that, especially if you know you got a kid that's a potential D1 kid on your team. Try to get them into them showcase games because, truth be told, I think when John Querius came to that showcase game against St. Aug and Loyola, I think everybody got a chance to see him live firsthand. And I think that's what made people say, okay, this kid really could play. This kid is one of the top players in the state. Had he not went to that, I think people will still be saying John Querius is, you know, okay, we heard he good, but we don't know how really good he is.
I agree. Because I think he got his offer at that after that particular tournament. But let's talk about this for a second. When we talk about rankings, the rankings that have been given out this year so far, because I know Preston said they're going to do another one at the end of the year. The rankings that have been given out thus far, is there any one surprise maybe out of the top 50 that should have been, if they could have been, now that you know at the end of the season, would have been ranked in the top 10? And I'm not saying they were 50, but let's say they were, you know, below 10. That would change after you have watched the season play. You saw the finales in some of these tournaments. Is there anybody that was a surprise to you?
Was Gabriel in your top 10, Preston? From St. Martinville?
He was in top 20.
Right.
He is a player, and it's kind of hard to crack the top 10 because the top 10 is really in the 2021 class. A couple of years ago, we thought it was going to be kind of, and it's turning out to be a pretty good class. And Gabriel, he did put on the show, especially in March Madness, helped
on that stage.
Yeah, it helped showcase what he could do because I like Datavius. It's just he also had a game in his gym against Peabody where he couldn't hit the side of the barn. but of course, that's Peabody, and they're going to defend. So I mean, those games helped him though, and I'm not gonna say top 10, but he did make a great showing for himself, and he deserved that Southern offer. And if it wasn't just Southern, any other thing that came his way, because he played his tail off and he earned it.
Well, I thought Benny Amos was a kid this year. I'm not saying he deserved to be in the top 10, but that was a kid this year that last year in his junior year, I didn't think he was going to have the kind of senior year that he had. I thought Benny Amos was, one of the best scorers, one of the best shooters in the state this year. So I think he was somebody that I didn't even really expect to have on my radar as one of the top players in the state. From Landry Walker, from LB Landry.
Yeah, and of course, you wouldn't expect him to be district MVP because, Jamon had been putting up the numbers or had been doing a lot of the work the first 3 years. So you were almost kind of expecting walking into the year, Jamon was going to be district player of the year and all that stuff. But Benny had you're right, Benny had a year.
And Hobert, do you have anybody?
You
get it 30 seconds.
I just think that sometimes in this ranking and recruiting and scouting thing that we give kids too much respect that keep the ball in their hands. I think we don't give enough respect to the two-way player.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, if you have the ball in your hands 70% of the time with your team, and regardless to whether you can score the ball or not, that's irrelevant. But if you have the ball 90% of the time and you can decide when and when you are not going to shoot, be a good, I've seen kids take bad shots, get taken out of the game, come back in and do the same crap again. And we call that basketball. Well, it's unfair to the kids that work really hard to develop their skill set. And I think those are the kids that get undervalued and underlooked. For playing the right way is no reward.
Well, who's that kid for you that got underlooked?
In this 2021 class, I got issues with the 2021 class. I ain't gonna lie. Like, it's hard to, and Preston knows how I feel about this. That 2020 class was so good. It was so many really good players in the 2020 class. Like, my expectation was, I think, too high. And because of that, I let my emotions probably run wild, and when things didn't meet what I was expecting, I kind of shut down. And so if I just gotta say a kid that didn't get the respect that he deserved.
You're talking about 2021.
2021, yeah, I'm gonna stay in my time. I'm gonna stay in my lane.
I know who 2020 is.
It would probably be two kids. Can I give two real quick?
Just one. Just
one. Randarius Jones, Carroll High School, Monroe, Louisiana, comes off of injury towards ACL his sophomore year. His junior year at Carroll High School. He was everything for Carroll. They go on to win 7 games last year. He comes back, gets them to the semifinals. Kid has no offers, but the kid is a 4-5. Kid can shoot the mid range. He can face up. He can play with his back to the basket. He runs the floor well. He does a lot well. I think he's the kid that's undervalued in the 2021 class.
Thank you for that. We've been talking a lot about boys basketball. Let's talk about girls for a minute here and the rankings for girls. I know Prep Hoops does girls as well. How about you, Mr. Gray, for G Sports?
No, that's something I'm definitely about to start getting into.
Mr. Preston.
Oh, I'm actually not over that. So I have not worked with the girls, and I'm going to get more into that.
Okay, we're gonna have to get some ladies on here to talk about some girls rankings for sure.
LRG is doing a phenomenal job though with the girls and giving them the exposure with the camps and because they really like shedding light on some girls in the state that I had no idea about, and I think that's good for the state, real good.
Mr. Hobert, I see your hand up, but we're gonna come back to this on another episode where we're gonna do just one dedicated to the ladies.
Definitely.
Can I get? Hold on. Am I mute? Am I muted?
You should.
No,
I'm open. Hey. Let me. Can I shout out one girl? One girl.
We're gonna come back and do a full show with the ladies to make sure they get their due diligence, because I'm all about fairness, especially for the ladies. And so this show will be dedicated to the boys, and the next one will be to the girls. But I do want to hit one last thing before we leave. And we kind of circled around back to this full circle. We talked about the hype of the rankings. We talked about passing the eye test to get on those rankings. We talked about you watching video. And so I want to just talk about one other player who I think may have fell into all those categories, but wasn't on your list. Carter Domain from St. Thomas More.
You want me to get my take on it?
Yes.
I think Carter Domain is a really good player. Plays the right way. Was in a great system with a great coach. I just could not put him above those 5 that I had. If somebody put him in a top 5, I can understand it to some degree, but those 5 that I have, I just don't. I think they impact the game more in different ways than Carter does, in my opinion.
Preston.
I love Carter, and he's 10th ranked player in prep hoops, and the reason why is, he's a knockdown shooter. He knows how to run the point. I guess people always are looking for a wow. There's no wow about Carter other than he wins. And he wins, and he continuously wins. He's a very good player. And he's not in my top 5 either, but it's no disrespect to him, because that kid flats out gives you everything he has every time he's on the floor. And there's not many people who can play football on Sunday and they're on the basketball court on Monday, scoring 17 points.
Mr. Grayson, your thoughts?
I get a thought on this.
Quick thought.
Damn. You know what? I'm gonna pass on this one. I have no comment. And I have no comment because
it'll last longer than 30 seconds.
It'll definitely last longer than 30 seconds. But what I see in Carter is way different from what everybody else sees. So I'll just keep my comments to myself.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you all for joining the show today. Next week, we're going to have on our show, we're going to be talking about AAU. You mentioned that in terms of student athletes being ranked. So we're going to have some of the great AAU coaches on from teams across Louisiana talking about how that plays a role in students athletes getting better, getting ranked. What does it mean for them to be on these circuit teams or not? Join us next week as we will be back again at 7 p.m. with the head of the game. No cap, no shade, just facts. See you next week at 7 p.m.